Hi everybody, welcome to Friday at the Farm. I'm Suzanne Huff, and today I wanted to share some information about the railroad that used to run up and down Chamblee-Dunwoody Road. If it wasn't for the Roswell Railroad, which ran from 1881 to 1921, Dunwoody may not have become the city that it is today. With the construction of the railroad, there was a need for a depot and railroad section houses in Dunwoody. Businesses sprang up alongside the railroad, including a livery, a millery, pharmacy, feed store, community well, blacksmith, and doctor's office, all in the same area that we know of today as Dunwoody Village. The idea of the railroad started prior to the Civil War when the owners of the Roswell Manufacturing Company of Roswell, Georgia, determined that a railroad was needed to carry goods produced in their mills down to Atlanta. Grading work began to prepare the track, but that work was halted with the onset of the war. In the 1870s, construction resumed and a narrow track was laid. In 1881, the first engine of the Roswell Railroad started working. It was a small engine known as the Dinky. This was not necessarily an unusual name, as other small engines across the country had that same name. Later in 1903, the track was switched out for a double gauge, and the larger engine that traveled that line was known as Buck or Old Buck. The train made the 10-mile trip 3 times a day. It would travel forward to Roswell and then backwards to Chamblee because there was no place for it to turn around. The railroad path took it from the Chamblee Depot, across what's now Peachtree Industrial Boulevard, through Chamblee Plaza, and on towards the location of Chamblee United Methodist Church. There was a trestle over Nancy Creek near the church, and the tracks continued on across what's now present-day I-285 and Georgetown Park subdivision and on up towards Chamblee-Dunwoody Road. It actually would pass right in front of the Donaldson Bannister farm and on up towards downtown Dunwoody. Going up this direction. And from there it followed primarily the current day Roberts Drive on towards the Chattahoochee River. There were 4 stops along the way for the Roswell Railroad. After leaving Chamblee, the first stop was Wilson's Mill, known as a flag stop because the train only stopped if it was flagged down. The Dunwoody Depot was situated pretty much where you see this video, between the CVS and the Chevron gas station / NFA Burger, where they're located today. The third stop was Power Station, and it was located in the area where Chamblee-Dunwoody Road meets Spalding Road. And the final stop was the Roswell Depot, which was located on the south side of the Chattahoochee River in what is now Sandy Springs. The original plan was for the tracks to go over a bridge and end in the city of Roswell, but cost prevented this plan from being completed. Later, a spur was built from the power station to Bull's Sluice in the Morgan Falls area. Supplies to help build the Morgan Falls Dam were carried by the spur, and the dam was built to help bring electricity to the area. In the 40 years that the Old Buck and the Dinky ran, the only engineer it ever had was Isaac or Ike Roberts, and Roberts Road is named after him. I mentioned that the Dunwoody Depot sat in between today's CVS and the Chevron / NFA Burger on Chamblee-Dunwoody Road. There were also 3 railroad section houses built on the other side of the road. They were built to house the men who worked on the railroad. In 1994, 2 of the section houses were bulldozed to make way for a Boston Market restaurant. This event is what inspired Joyce Almacher and Lynn Bird to start identifying historic properties in the area and led to the creation of Dunwoody Preservation Trust. The 3rd and final section house is still here, and today it houses the Community Music Center. One of Old Buck's most exciting trips was on October 21, 1905, when President Theodore Roosevelt and First Lady Edith Roosevelt traveled to Roswell to visit his mother's home, Bullock Hall. They rode the train from Atlanta to Chamblee and then boarded the Roswell Railroad to go to the Roswell station. From there, they went by carriage across the Chattahoochee River and on to Bullock Hall. The story tells us that Ike Roberts drove slowly through Dunwoody that day, ringing the train bell and blowing the whistle to cheers from all the people of the town. The train stopped running in 1921, and the old tracks have given way to paved roads. When the Boston Market was built in the 1990s, part of the original single gauge rails were found. And even as recent as last year, people were still finding old railroad spikes buried in their yard that ran beside the railroad. Thanks for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about Dunwoody's past history. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week. Thanks.